we didn't believe that we would be killed because there were so many people and I couldn't believe that they could kill all of us.
In July 1995, Bosnian Serb soldiers shot dead thousands of unarmed Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica. It was Europe's worst atrocity since the Second World War.
I had nightmares that I didn't ever get rid of it.
But today, the genocide verdicts of the International Court are being questioned by politicians and the town's new mayor, even here where the massacres took place.
Da se dokaže I da istina u Srebrenici nije dokazana.
The genocide didn't happen. That's official politics. Today we fight for justice. It isn't finished.
Nedjad Avdic returned to Srebrenica 10 years ago. He and his wife Elvisa are bringing up their 3 daughters in what became Republika Srpska, the Bosnian Serb entity within Bosnia-Herzegovina. Nedjad is one of its believed only 6 survivors out of around 8,000 killed in July 1995.
I had a need deeply inside me to come here, to show them that I survived.
His return after the war was a gesture of defiance against those who wanted Muslims erased. But he says life is becoming increasingly difficult.
I worry because of discourse and the rhetoric here in Bosnia, especially in the last few years. We have new indoctrinated generations of children. Everywhere you have propaganda, and because of that my wife, she just wants to leave Srebrenica.
During the war, Srebrenica became a UN safe haven, packed with fleeing Bosnian Muslim refugees, including Elvisa and, separately, 17-year-old Nedjad. But the UN abandoned them in 1995 when Bosnian Serb forces besieged the town. Do you remember the feeling?
Yes, everything. It's painful to remember that.
The leader of the Bosnian Serb forces, General Ratko Mladic, now on trial for genocide in The Hague, promised civilians safe passage. Women and children like Elvisa were bussed out. The men were told they'd follow.
Evo pogledajte oko njegovi, ovi svi djedovi, ovi svi dječaci, ovo niko nije došao. Niko nije preživio.
Nedjad took us on the journey he made back in 1995. Then, as a prisoner, crammed into a truck with dozens of others, their hands tied behind their backs.
That's the place where mass execution took place. I could see the lines and rows of dead bodies. I knew it was the end, really, at that moment. They ordered us to lay down, and I just thought, oh, my mother would never knew where I ended up, how I finished, and then they started a fire, and I was dying, and I just could hear moans of other people who were wounded. It was so painful. I just prayed with God to die. And then I noticed someone was moving in front of me, and I saw, and I asked him, "Are you alive?" He said, yes, I'm alive, come and tie me. Yeah, it's enough. No, yeah, I can show you something else. Yeah, but before security could come,
The pair escaped when the soldiers went to collect more men to kill. Nejad was badly wounded and in terrible pain. As day broke and they crawled through the forest, the full scale and planning behind the massacre became apparent. After the war, the international effort to find and identify the missing thousands began, in amongst them Nejad's father and uncle.
I know for my uncle that his remains were found in 4 mass graves. They wanted to hide it and excavated them and reburied them again, and because of that they've broken their bodies.
Događaj u Srebrenici što se toga tiče za mene I za Republiku Srpsku nije genocid.
The current president of Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, doesn't accept the international court verdicts when it comes to Srebrenica. Here, they celebrate convicted war criminals like the former president Radovan Karadzic as heroes. The wartime general Ratko Mladic is still on trial. But so far, 6 senior figures have been found guilty of genocide by the Hague War Crimes Court. When Radovan Karadzic's second-in-command was released from prison a few years ago, he was feted.
Tim zadnjih par godina, možda 2, 3, sve više I više je toga ovdje. Šta mogu da nam učine, da nam otežaju, on to čini.
No longer a predominantly Muslim town, the scars of war are still visible in Srebrenica today. Last year, the town elected a new mayor who's promised economic development. It's the first time a Bosnian Serb has filled the role since the war. But his views on the Srebrenica massacre have caused alarm amongst some of the Bosniaks who've returned.
Do you believe Radovan Karadzic is a hero?
Pa vjerujem. Iz razloga što da nije bilo Radovana Karadzića u mirnodopskom, dakle pre rata, kada je stvorena Republika Srpska, vjerovatno ne bi postojala više Republika Srpska I vjerovatno bi se bili tragičniji sukobi I pogubniji po srpski narod kada su u pitanju ovi prostori, odnosno ovaj prostor Republike Srpske.
Do you accept the judgment of the International Court that genocide happened in Srebrenica?
Ne. Slažem se da je, I to sam uvijek I govorio, slažem se da je bio zločin, ali kvalifikacija je sporna. Kvalifikacija genocida je sporna. I isto tako znam da je na isti način ubijan I srpski narod, ali se nije okarakterisalo kao genocid.
Some argue the Balkan War is a frozen conflict, that Republika Srpska's ruling politicians still want to set up the entirely separate Bosnian Serb state they didn't achieve through violence. With international eyes focused elsewhere, President Dodik regularly threatens a referendum on the entity ceding from Bosnia-Herzegovina. His mayor in Srebrenica isn't averse to that idea.
A ako bi bolji život bio da se jednostavno odvoji Republika Srpska od federacije I da onaj ko želi da živi u Republici Srpskoj, da li to bio Bošnjak ili Hrvat ili Srbi ili ostali, da tu ostane da živi, a oni isto tako koji žele da žive u federaciji, da li su to Srbi ili ostali narodi, I ako je to funkcionalnije I ako to može na miran način da se uradi, ja sam za takvu soluciju.
With the mood changing, Nejad and Elvisa told me they already know Bosniaks who've packed up and left. Elvisa would like to follow them.
If you leave, who will be the winner?
In that case, the genocide would pay off. Those who committed such horror, they would win.
Every year on the anniversary, more men are buried in the vast Potocari memorial to the genocide victims of Srebrenica. Sometimes a bone fragment is all that's been found. And for 22 years, Nejad has carried the burden of being one survivor living in place of thousands. Amongst the dead, the father to whom he never got to say goodbye.
Just reminds me of last moment when I lost father in the chaos.
I wondered, based on his experiences, whether Nejad has a warning about where unchecked nationalism can lead.
We had a normal country. Hatred, nationalistic conversation can take us to the war, and after that to the killing. Very often I ask myself where we are going now, because I see very bad things in Europe.
And what of true reconciliation here, where genocide is denied in the very place it's judged to have happened?
Those who had their hands bloody, if they are come one day and ask for forgiveness, I think that it wouldn't be a problem for us to extend our hands.
Do you think they ever will?
For now, though, the divisions in a country apparently still so split along ethnic lines look almost as wide as ever.